seminary appeal weekend where most of the seminarians from Mundelein Seminary, about 190 of us, we were all sent out to parishes in the Archdiocese of Chicago and surrounding dioceses to ask for funds, to ask for financial support for the seminary, and it's one of our biggest financial fundraisers for the year. Now, don't be afraid. I know you're all thinking you have to give money. I'm not here to ask for money, but I am here in the spirit of Seminary Sunday to talk about vocations. Now, because your pastor is the vocation director, you've probably heard about vocations ad nauseam for the last 4 years. But I think it's important to keep bringing it up because it is at the forefront of our mission as a parish. What do we as a church, need in order to function well? We need priests. We need people out in the pews, of course, to listen to us, but we need priests. So I just want to offer you a few statistics about the current situation of the priesthood in the Diocese of Gary. There will be a lot of numbers, so please just bear with me. We have a total of 9 seminarians this academic year, myself included. So that means that in the next 8 years, there will be at most 9 of us who are ordained priests, assuming that all of us stay in seminary and continue on to priesthood. In that same 8-year period, there will be roughly 27, maybe more, priests who will be eligible for retirement. They will reach retirement age. So in the 8-year period, where we have 9 guys possibly that will be ordained, we will have about 3 times that many who will reach retirement age. Here's another statistic. We have about 60 active diocesan priests currently serving the diocese. Bishop Hying is a relatively young bishop. He is 53 years old. Guess how many priests there are who are younger than him in the diocese? There are 15 priests younger than 53 in the Diocese of Gary. That means there are about 45 active priests under the age of 70 who are still serving the diocese and who in the next 17 years will reach retirement age. So that means after that we will have those 15 priests, plus those of us who get ordained in the next few years, plus those who will be ordained after us. Now, I'm not intending to scare anyone with these statistics. You're all giving me crazy looks, I can see. But it's important that reality sets in now rather than wait longer and say we need to do something about this. Rather than be 10 or 20 years in the future and wish we had done something about it a few years ago. If you go out into the narthex of the school here, out into the front foyer, you'll notice that we have our vocation poster up with all of the pretty faces of the seminarians of our diocese on it. And these posters are everywhere, so you've probably seen them in a lot of places. But at the seminary, it's customary, most of the seminarians will put these on their doors. So whatever diocese you're coming from throughout the United States, there's about 40 dioceses who send to Mundelein Seminary. And so we have 190 men. There's a lot of posters that go up on doors. When I walk through the hallways, sometimes I'm thinking, should I really put my vocation poster up? Because it's a little embarrassing to see that some of the other posters are chocked full of pictures. Tons of seminarians studying for these dioceses throughout the country. Many of these dioceses are smaller than the Diocese of Gary. They have fewer Catholics. And some of these posters have 20, 30, 40, some have even more than 50 seminarians studying for their diocese. And I'm thinking, what are we not doing that all of these other dioceses are doing to get so many young men interested in the priesthood and studying as seminarians? Of course, that's good news for them because they're going to have lots of priests to serve their church in the coming years. You might think it's bad news for us, but it's good news because it shows us that our situation does not reflect the situation throughout the United States, thanks be to God. There are many more priests than what you simply see on that vocation poster out in the foyer. It's good news also because it shows us that we can increase our numbers drastically. We can double and triple our numbers of seminarians in the next few years. But it's going to require some work. Here's another statistic. If every parish in the next 20 years, every parish in the diocese, roughly 60 parishes, produced one priest in the next 20 years, in 20 years we would have the same number of priests that we do now. There wouldn't be a vocation shortage. If we had one priest from each parish in the next 20 years, does that sound possible to everybody? I think so, and it should be something that should be at the front of our minds. But what needs to be promoted in our church as a culture is a culture of vocations. Something that we don't just talk about once a year, or something that we don't just mention to some young guy who might be thinking about the priesthood. It's something that is at the forefront of our mind. It's got to be in our blood. It's got to be like looking at your cell phone every 10 minutes. It's got to be automatic. We got to be thinking about it constantly. How do we promote vocations in our church? How do we encourage young guys? Now let's be honest. Our culture today, especially for young people, is not easy to discern a vocation. It's not popular to commit your life to celibate chastity at 20-something years old. That's kind of countercultural today. Likewise, for young girls, it's not popular to want to dedicate your life to God as a sister or as a nun. And also, it's not very popular to want to get married nowadays at a young age, to have children, and to be committed to one spouse for the rest of your life. Whatever vocation it is, it's not really popular to follow the way that God had planned it. And so that makes vocation promotion a little bit tougher, but with all of our help and all of our input, we can make it happen. It is possible. Today's gospel, we read about the parable of the rich man and Lazarus. This rich man who was caught up in his own comfort zone and who refused to get out of it, even to see this needy person at his doorstep. He was so locked up in his own world that he didn't notice the world around him. Wasn't open to the plan of God in his life. When I was thinking about the priesthood, I also was locked up in my own comfort zone. I said, to heck with that. I do not want to become a priest if it involves all this stuff. Busy life, celibacy, all this other stuff. And I said, I don't want to have to do that. But like the rich man, I was caught up in my comfort zone, and I didn't want to say yes to the Lord. So likewise with our young people, it's important to encourage our young people to get up out of their comfort zone, to set aside their own plans for a time, and to be open to what God is calling them to do with their lives. Certainly, it involves a radical commitment, no matter what vocation we enter. Okay? So, living a life of celibate chastity is a radical commitment. Having children and having sleepless nights as a parent is a radical commitment, and oftentimes might leave parents wishing they were celibate at times. So you understand that. But whatever vocation we enter, if we bring Christ into it, it's what brings us true joy. It's what brings us that fulfillment. And so, friends, I ask you to please support vocations to the priesthood. It's a very joyful lifestyle. It is not a dry, lonely, arid life like most of the culture thinks and what you hear from the media, whatever else we get from the world around us. It's not a dry, sullen, sulky life. Or else, why would all these young men be wanting to become priests? At Mundelein Seminary, out of 190 guys there, about 80%, possibly 85% of the men there are under the age of 30 who are studying to be priests. You look at the poster of all of us 9 seminarians for Gary, and 8 of the 9 of us are under 30, and the oldest one is like 33 years old. So, relatively young crop of seminarians. But we have to ask the question, why are we so drawn to the priesthood, those of us who are in seminary? We see in it a joy, a life of service to the church. We see in it the commitment to walk with people in their lives of faith at their most difficult times and at their most joyful times of their lives. We see it as an opportunity to act in the person of Jesus Christ and to bring people closer to Christ. And that is the joy of the priesthood. So, as a parish, what can we do? first of all, as always, pray for vocations. Pray for our young men and young women who may be discerning a call to the priesthood or religious life. Pray for these young guys who are up here at the altar. You're not getting away from this homily here. Pray for our young men who are considering the priesthood, that they might be open to the Lord's call. Most importantly, and this is for parents, please be open to whatever the Lord is calling your child to do. You may want to have grandchildren, may want to continue on the family name, may want to continue the family business, whatever it is. That may not be the Lord's plan. You may be calling your child to become a priest or to enter religious life. And that's something that we just have to be open to. Because whatever our plans are, they may or may not be the Lord's plans. So that's something to be open to. Please be open. Please support vocations. Let us build this culture of vocations in our parish so that it's like a billboard in front of our face that we can't possibly miss. It's always embedded in our mind. It's in our blood, something we're always thinking about. Together, we can build a bright future in the church. Amen.